I'm Blake, a professional innovator and designer in pursuit of the invisible smart home.
Water leak alert.
Today, I'm going to talk about how I integrated my pool into my smart home, or my SmartThings controller. But before I get to that, I just want to show you how to change the light in the spa or hot tub. I had an issue with light when I turned it on in the spa, that it was blinking or go off and on quickly. And I assumed it's because some water penetrated this and it was just shorting out. Of course, it's not dangerous because it's only 12 volts, and I'm going to talk a bit about that later. So I had to get in the hot tub and loosen this screw. And then because this cord was wrapped around this to fit it all in the hole there in the bottom, I had to wedge it out with a crowbar because it was very tight inside there. And you can see how it's sealed. I've already cleaned it up a bit here, but there's a rubber gasket that goes around this glass cover. And perhaps that's a little worn out, and it fits in there. And then this trims it out after you clamp this on there to kind of squeeze the gasket a bit so that it doesn't leak water. So I obviously have a problem with it leaking water, so I'm not sure if I'm going to add some silicone tape or maybe a bit of lubricant or silicone lubricant. But we'll get to that in a minute. This is what it looks like. All right, so I cleaned this up a bit, best I could with the tools I had, wire brush and so on. And this is the clamp that I think is going to have trouble sealing this properly, which it did, it lasted a couple years last time I put this in there. So the biggest concern is not really electrical or shock. The biggest concern is the mechanical, because it's hard to get this in there with all this cable wrapped around here. It's a very tight fit. And I think kind of forcing it in there also can disrupt the seal around here. So I cleaned this up a bit, and this should seal okay. But just to be sure, I think I'm gonna try putting some silicone tape around this. So I cleaned this up a bit, the best I could with the tools I had. This is the clamp that clamps onto the seal. I cleaned up these edges, and let's put the new light bulb in. This happens to be a 12 volt, well, not happens to be, it seems to be a standard 12 volt light bulb. This is an LED, very low wattage. When I opened it up before, there was a similar bulb in here that I replaced 4 or 5 years ago, and I could see that it was still working, but it was shorting out because there was water in here. So I had to actually use a pair of pliers because it fell apart when I took it out. But let's get this back in here. All right, so there's the seal. All right, so silicone tape is kind of a cool product. It's not sticky on either side. It really only sticks to itself. All right, so I want to pull this back from the edge a bit. All right, so I added some silicone tape and screwed it together nice and tight. I'm not sure the silicone tape's going to help with that potential leak in the gasket. Maybe eventually I'm going to have to replace this front piece and the gasket. But let's give it a try. Like I said earlier, the hard part is going to be getting it back in there because this long cord is thick, and wrapping it around here and tucking it all in the hole is the tight part. But let's give it a try. Oh, before I do that, I'm going to just test it and make sure it comes off and on. All right, it works, and so does the pool light. It's not flashing like it was before. All right, so it's back in there and it's working, which is great. Both lights are working, and hopefully it'll still be working in a couple days. That'll at least tell me if it's leaking. It was a bit of a work to get that in there with that big cable. I actually had to get in the hot tub and brace myself at the back and use my feet to kind of shuffle it flat. It's a couple days later, and the pool light is still working, and the hot tub light. So that's good. Now let's get on to how I integrated my pool controls into my smart home or SmartThings. So let's just show you how the steps I have to take to turn on the hot tub. So I have to turn two valves. I'm gonna turn this one here 90 or 180 degrees. I have to turn this one 180 degrees. I have to turn on the heat pump by flicking the breaker for the heater. And then I have to go to the heat pump and tell it with 2 or 3 clicks to set the hot tub setting temperature. Now I've replaced that all. I replaced all those steps with just a single button in SmartThings or a voice command, or I'll show you in a second a button I have on the wall. All right, so to accomplish all this automation, I had to go through a number of steps. So I added these 12 volt or 24 volt motors to the 2 valves. I added a relay to drive those valves, and the relay is driven by a smart relay here, which I think is the Remotech. So you push this button and it starts those both valves turning. This is a Z-Wave device, and there was a second version of this that sets the hot tub temperature. And to get to the hot tub temperature, I had to take this whole panel off and get in there, and there's a controller board, and there's some low voltage settings that you can get to. So I basically crossed a couple contacts in there, and that either sets hot tub temperature or pool temperature. That's how that works. And I replaced a timer that was in here. This is my power supply for my garden lights. I replaced a timer for the pool with a Z-Wave pool controller. And the switch for the pool lights was easy. It was just a regular switch that I replaced with a smart switch. So now all these devices are integrated with SmartThings. So I can turn off and on the pool pump. I can turn off and on the heater with I sent a separate set of wires to the panel here. That I guess that's what this is for. This is a Z-Wave relay. So I can turn off and on the heater, and I can open or close these 2 valves simultaneously, and I can set the temperature to pool or hot tub. Again, this is a pretty serious project in terms of high voltages. There's 220 and 120 in there. This is not a project you should approach lightly. If you're not experienced, consult a professional. So this is what it looks like in the real world when I initiate the spa routine in SmartThings. Turns on the pool pump, turns on the heater. It sets the to spa mode in the heater, so it's set to the 100-degree temperature and not the 85-degree temperature. And it starts turning these 2 valves 180 degrees. Of course, you can reverse the process as well. All right, so I have a smart speaker set up here, so it's easy to turn on the spa or the pool off and on. And I've set up a scene button so I can turn the hot tub off and on with separate buttons, or turn the pool off and on with separate buttons. And it's convenient that the button above here controls the garden lights all around the pool. So connecting the Z-Wave controller was a bit awkward in SmartThings. It obviously didn't have a proper driver for it. But I managed to get it to work. It's also interesting that I just looked it up, and now it's like $400. I paid $89. I bought it back in 2019, so that's a bit crazy. The Remotech relays I use for both the valve motors and for turning off, connecting it to the control panel in the heater to turn the heater off and on. Doesn't look like they're available anymore. There's lots of choices. I would probably just go with some Z-Wave dry contact relay for that in the future. The same goes for the relay I use for the to set spa or pool temperature. Any standard dry contact relay that's smart that can connect to your controller of choice, Z-Wave, Zigbee, Matter, or even Wi-Fi. The multi-button I showed you earlier that I use to locally just turn it off and on is a good idea. It's, you know, you're not always going to want to pull out your phone or even talk to a smart speaker to turn it on. It's good for guests or other members of the family that aren't as much of a DIY enthusiast as you are. All right, so I have these cool controls for my pool now. I like it, and I did it back in like 2019. It looks like if I was to do it again, at least for the Z-Wave controller and the motors, the drive motors for the valves, they're probably about 4 times the price. Things have really gone up. Prices for the relays and the other Z-Wave components have probably gone down a little bit. But I would guess now when you get a pool, you can probably get it with a Wi-Fi option to a smart app, and then probably there's an API to connect that smart app to your controller of choice. All right, thanks for watching. Give me a thumbs up, subscribe, and look for my next video. Cheers.